Are you curious about the fascinating and sometimes shocking punishments employed during the Roman Empire's reign? Well, you're in for a captivating journey as we delve into ancient Rome. Within this great civilization, there were rules and regulations for its citizens to follow and consequences for those who dared to break them. Prepare to be amazed as we uncover the 8 most unusual and mind-boggling punishments ever used in the Roman Empire. Starting with number 1, let's uncover the practice of crucifixion. While many associate it with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, it existed long before his time. It was introduced to Rome in the 4th century BC and used on enslaved people, rebels, pirates, and enemies of the state. Crucifixion was a brutal process where individuals were nailed to a cross and left to die, sometimes taking hours or even days. It was a humiliating and painful way to meet their end. Moving on to number 2, we have the practice of damnation ad bestias, which involved prisoners and enslaved people being thrown into arenas filled with wild animals. These spectacles occurred in theaters like the Colosseum, where people watched as their victims faced lions, bears, and other ferocious creatures. It was a brutal and public display of violence. At number 3, we discover the penalty of the sack, reserved for the crime of patricide, the act of killing one's parents. Those found guilty of this heinous crime faced horrific punishments. Before being killed, they were beaten with whips and had their clothes taken away. Then they were placed in a sack with specific animals, including a snake, a rooster, a monkey, and a dog. This punishment aimed to be both physically and mentally torturous. In the Roman Empire, a punishment known as being buried alive struck fear into the hearts of the women who belonged to the Vestal Virgin Society. The Vestal Virgins were devoted women who dedicated themselves, both physically and spiritually, to the goddess of fire and home, Vesta. Because they were considered the daughters of Rome and symbols of purity, they were strictly forbidden from engaging in romantic or physical relationships with men. However, should a Vestal Virgin be discovered breaking this sacred rule, she would face the horrifying fate of being buried alive. Now, the concept of being buried alive may give images of being suffocated beneath piles of soil, but this punishment didn't necessarily entail literal burial underground. Instead, the condemned woman would be confined within a small underground chamber. This room, though not necessarily devoid of creature comforts, was a place of isolation and impending doom. Inside, she would find a meager setup consisting of a sofa, a lamp to provide light, and enough provisions to last a few days. One might argue that being locked away in such a chamber doesn't sound as terrifying as other punishments enjoyed during that time. However, the gradual horrors of this form of punishment would soon become apparent. Once the meager food supply ran out, the captive woman would starve in her cramped confines. The slow, agonizing death of starvation became the ultimate fate for many of these unfortunate women. While it is recorded that a few Vestal Virgins miraculously managed to escape their impending doom, historical research indicates that only a small number of women ever truly faced this form of punishment. Nonetheless, the potential cruelty of being buried alive was a powerful deterrent for other Vestal Virgins, ensuring their obedience to the sacred vow of celibacy. Moving on to another punishment employed in the Roman Empire, we encounter the practice of decimation, a penalty specifically reserved for soldiers who displayed cowardice in battle. In the Roman army, soldiers were trained to be at the forefront of any attack, willingly risking their lives for the sake of the empire. However, even the most courageous warriors could sometimes be plagued by human instincts that made them question the essence of death and the risks associated with combat. To deal with the problem of soldiers being cowards, the Romans came up with a really cruel punishment called decimation. This punishment was implemented when a group of soldiers, whether a smaller unit or an entire legion, demonstrated collective cowardice. The concept of decimation involved dividing the soldiers into groups of 10. There would be a random selection of one soldier from each group to go to death. A sack containing 10 rocks was brought forward, with 9 of them being white and 1 being black. Each soldier in turn would pick a stone from the sack. The color of the stone determined the soldier's fate. Those who drew a white rock were considered fortunate and granted a reprieve from death. However, the soldier who pulled the black stone was marked for execution. The remaining 9 soldiers, who had survived the draw, were instructed to carry out the sentence by beating the condemned soldier to death. It's interesting to note that during this punishment, no one was allowed to help the person in trouble, not even a friend or companion. If someone decided to aid the condemned soldier, they would also be punished in the same terrible way. This rule served as a harsh reminder for everyone to follow the rules and respect the military's chain of command. It showed how important discipline and obedience were in Rome's military hierarchy. The surviving soldiers who had participated in the decimation would then be subjected to additional hardships as a collective punishment. They were made to sleep outside the safety of the tented encampment at night, leaving them vulnerable to the elements and other potential dangers. Furthermore, their rations were reduced to a meager diet of barley. This meager sustenance was a symbolic reminder of their transgressions and a different means of instilling discipline. Another punishment involved being sewn into a donkey. The offender would be stripped and forced inside the animal's body, leaving only their head outside. Placed under the sun, the discomfort increased and vultures would peck at the decaying flesh, intensifying the horror. Romans found entertainment in torturous events in the Colosseum and other confined spaces. One other such method was cauldron torture, where a hungry animal like a cat, rat, or dog was placed inside a small cauldron attached to the offender's belly. The cauldron was heated, forcing the animal to seek an escape route. With both ends blocked, it would dig out, hurting the offender's stomach. Romans also used insects for punishment. In the bee basket torture, the accused was forcefully placed naked in a loosely woven basket and hung in a tree with an active beehive. Angry bees would attack the person until they succumbed to the relentless stinging, sometimes exacerbated by allergies. These Roman punishments, while disturbing, reflect a dark aspect of their society and the extreme measures they employed for retribution. One of the most terrible punishments used during the Roman era was boiling in oil. Emperor Nero, who hated Christians, used this method to capture and punish them. Nero would sit back and watch the event unfold like a movie. While this punishment was no longer used after Nero's reign, it was made legal again in 1531 by Henry VIII, and not just for Christians. People sentenced to death for poisoning others also suffered this fate. Another punishment in ancient Rome was public dismemberment. Same-gender love was prohibited, and if anyone was caught engaging in it, the punishment was to be publicly cut up. Climbing the social ladder was forbidden, and only the superiors could engage in such acts without consequences. This led to accusations and challenges, resulting in harsh punishments for ordinary citizens involved with soldiers. Strangulation was a common method of execution in Rome, as spilling blood within the city was taboo. The accused would be paraded around the city for public embarrassment before being brought to the Roman Forum for strangulation. Sometimes the accused would pass away during the parade or be taken back to their cell and die there. This fate befell Vercingetorix, a captured Gaelic tribe leader paraded during Julius Caesar's triumph in 46 BC. In conclusion, the ancient Romans had some truly brutal methods of punishment. These included death by parasites, being sewn into a donkey, burning in oil, public dismemberment, and strangulation. These punishments were inflicted on various individuals, including Christians accused of poisoning and those involved in same-gender relationships. The Romans believed in public spectacles and often watched these events as entertainment. These punishments served as means of controlling and instilling fear into the population. While some of these methods were specific to certain rulers or periods, they all reveal the harsh and brutal nature of justice in ancient Rome. Thank you for watching this episode. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and explore our other videos on this channel.